Snow fell thick over Michigan Avenue as the glass elevator carried Ethan Walker toward the top floor of the tower. Below, winter wind lashed the frozen lake. Above, champagne flowed and wealthy people laughed about an invitation sent as a joke. They expected a man who would bow his head, appear lost, apologize for his existence. But when the elevator doors opened, the man who stepped out did not bow. He walked slowly, spine straight as if the cold room itself was the thing that didn't belong. The city never looked colder than it did in January. Snow covered the sidewalks in uneven drifts. Salt trucks rumbled past at 3 in the morning, their orange lights cutting through the darkness. Wind whistled between buildings, finding every gap, every exposed piece of skin. Ethan Walker knew this cold intimately. He worked the night shift at Meridian Tower, one of Chicago's gleaming monuments to wealth. Glass and steel, 52 floors, heated marble lobbies where people passed through without seeing the man who kept the floors clean. He started at midnight, finished at 8. In between, the building belonged to him and the silence. His breath formed clouds in the basement parking garage where he stored his equipment. The concrete walls held the cold like a vault. His hands, even in gloves, ached by the time he pushed the industrial mop across the lobby floor. The lobby gleamed. Chandeliers reflected in the polished stone. During the day, executives crossed this space in wool coats and leather shoes, tracking in salt and slush without a second thought. At night, Ethan erased every trace. He worked methodically, floor by floor, restroom by restroom. Conference rooms where deals worth millions had been discussed over bottled water and catered lunches. He cleaned in silence, listening to the building settle. The heating system groan, the occasional distant elevator chime. By 6 in the morning, his lower back would protest. His knees would stiffen. But the work would be done, and done well, because that was the only way he knew how to do it. At 7:30, he'd ride the service elevator down to the basement locker room. At 7:45, Lily would arrive, his daughter, 8 years old, dark curls pulled back in a ponytail, backpack nearly as big as she was. The building manager, Marcus, one of the few people who treated Ethan like a human being, let her wait in the small break room while Ethan finished his shift. She'd do her homework at the folding table, bundled in a coat too big for her, wearing mittens with the fingertips cut off so she could hold a pencil. "Morning, Dad." She never complained about the cold, never asked why they couldn't afford better heating at home, never questioned why she had to wake up before dawn to meet him here. She just appeared, did her work, and waited. Some mornings, Ethan would find her asleep at the table, head resting on her math book, breath fogging in the unheated room. Those mornings hurt worse than his back ever could. He'd wake her gently. They'd take the bus home as the city brightened, passing coffee shops filling with people who'd slept through the night, who hadn't spent 8 hours on their feet making spaces pristine for others to occupy. Their apartment was small, 4th floor walk-up, radiator that clanked but didn't always produce heat, windows that rattled when the wind picked up, but it was theirs. Ethan would make breakfast. Lily would finish getting ready for school. They had a routine, a rhythm that kept chaos at bay. "You look tired," she'd say sometimes, studying him with eyes too observant for 8 years. "I'm fine. You always say that, because it's always true." She'd smile a little, not quite convinced, but willing to let it go. By 8:30, she'd be out the door, heading to school 3 blocks away. Ethan would shower, try to sleep, fail more often than he succeeded, and wake in the afternoon to make dinner, help with homework, read together before bed. Then he'd put on his uniform and return to Meridian Tower. The cycle repeated. Invisible. Efficient. Necessary but unnoticed. Until the invitation arrived. It came on a Tuesday. Ethan was emptying trash bins on the 47th floor when he found it a cream-colored envelope tucked between discarded papers in the executive suite. He almost threw it away. Something made him pause. Maybe the weight of the paper. Maybe the handwritten address visible through the translucent waste bag. He pulled it out. The envelope was expensive. heavy stock. The kind of paper that cost more than most people spent on groceries. His name was written in elegant script across the front. Ethan Walker. No apartment number. No street address. Just his name and Meridian Tower. Custodial services. He opened it carefully. Inside, an invitation. Is greater than you are cordially invited to the winter gala. Is greater than penthouse suite. 52nd floor. Is greater than Saturday, January 18th, 7 p.m. Is greater than. Hosted by Victoria Hale. Et supérieur à cocktailatier. That was all. No explanation. No context. Ethan stood in the empty office, invitation in hand, as snow began to fall outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria Hale. He knew the name. Everyone in the building did. She owned 3 floors, ran a venture capital firm that made and destroyed fortunes, appeared in business magazines wearing designer suits and an expression that suggested she found the world mildly disappointing. Ethan had cleaned her office exactly once, 2 months ago, when her regular night was shifted. She'd been working late. He'd knocked, apologized for the interruption, asked if he should come back later. She'd looked at him for a long moment. Not unkindly. No, go ahead. He'd worked quickly, efficiently, invisible as always. When he finished, she'd said, "You're thorough. Thank you, ma'am." That was the only conversation they'd ever had. Now this. Ethan reread the invitation 3 times, looking for a clue he might have missed. There was none. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. The next night, Marcus found him in the basement. "Hey, Ethan. You get something weird recently?" Ethan looked up from the mop bucket. "Weird how?" "An invitation." "To Victoria Hale's party." "I did." Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He was in his 50s, had worked at Meridian for 20 years, and had the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much casual cruelty dressed up as business. "You planning to go?" "I'm considering it." "Don't." The word came out flat. "Certain." Ethan straightened. "Why?" "Because it's a joke, man. I heard her talking about it with her friends last week. They were laughing about sending invitations to. They called it the help. Wanted to see who'd actually show up. Some kind of social experiment or game or I don't know what." Silence filled the concrete room. Ethan felt the weight of the invitation in his locker, 10 feet away. She invited others? 3 people. You, the daytime security guard, and one of the administrative assistants. All of you. Marcus hesitated. "All of you are black." "That's not a coincidence." Ethan nodded slowly. "So, don't go," Marcus continued. "Don't give them the satisfaction." "What satisfaction?" "Of watching you walk into a room full of rich white people who think you're there to serve drinks." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What if I don't walk in like that?" Marcus studied him. "What do you mean? What if I walk in like I belong there?" "Ethan, not because I want their approval. Not because I think I'll fit in, but because they invited me. And I can show up the same way anyone else would. They'll tear you apart." "Maybe. Definitely." Ethan picked up the mop handle. "Thanks for the warning, Marcus. I appreciate it." Marcus sighed. "You're going anyway." "I'm thinking about it." Ethan didn't answer immediately. He pushed the mop across the floor, watching water spread across tile. Finally, "Because Lily asked me once why I always use the service elevator. I told her it's more convenient. She looked at me like she knew I was lying. I don't want to be the kind of man who lies to his daughter about why he makes himself small." Marcus was quiet. Then he nodded. "All right. But wear something good. Don't give them an easy target." Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Ethan woke at 6 out of habit, even though he didn't have to work. Lily was still asleep. He made coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. The suit hung in his closet. He'd bought it 7 years ago for a job interview that had gone nowhere. Navy blue. Simple. Nothing expensive, but well made and carefully maintained. He'd tried it on the night before. It still fit, though his shoulders had broadened from years of physical labor. At breakfast, Lily watched him over her cereal. "You're going to that party." It wasn't a question. "I am, because I was invited. But you said it might be mean." Like a trick, Ethan set down his coffee. "It might be. Then why go?" He considered his answer carefully. "Because sometimes people want you to stay small and quiet, and sometimes the right thing to do is stand up straight and let them see you." Lily thought about this. "Like when Brandon Parks tried to make me sit at the back of the cafeteria? What did you do?" "Sat in the middle. Right in front." "How did that feel?" "Scary. But good." Ethan smiled. "Exactly like that?" She nodded, satisfied. At 6 o'clock, he started getting ready. He showered, shaved carefully, dressed slowly, making sure every detail was right. The shirt was pressed. The shoes were old but polished until they caught the light. When he emerged from the bathroom, Lily was waiting. She stared at him for a long moment. "You look like you're in a movie. The winter kind." "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you scared?" He knelt down to her level. "A little. But you're going anyway? That's brave." He kissed her forehead. "Mrs. Patterson is going to stay with you until I get back. Probably just a couple of hours." "I know." "Dad? Stand up straight. Like you tell me to." He smiled. "I will." The neighbor arrived at 6:30. Ethan gave Lily one more hug and stepped out into the hallway. The building was quiet. Most people were inside, sheltering from the cold that had intensified as the sun set. He walked the 4 blocks to the bus stop. Waited. Watched his breath form clouds. The bus arrived. He rode it downtown, watching the city transform from residential blocks to commercial towers. At Michigan Avenue, he got off. Meridian Tower rose before him, lit up against the dark sky. Snow had started falling again, fat flakes that caught the light. He'd entered this building hundreds of times, never through the front door. Tonight, he walked straight to the main entrance. The doorman Roger, who sometimes nodded at Ethan when they crossed paths during shift changes, froze mid-step. "Mr. Walker?" "Evening, Roger. Are you?" "Is everything okay?" "I'm here for the party. 52nd floor." Roger's eyes widened. "The Miss Hale's party?" "That's right." A moment of confusion. Then Roger's training kicked in. "Of course. Let me get the elevator for you." He held the door open. Ethan walked into the lobby he'd cleaned 1,000 times. Under the chandelier he'd dusted. Across the marble he'd mopped. As himself. Not invisible. Roger pressed the elevator call button, then stepped back. "Have a good evening, sir." The word "sir" hung in the air between them. Ethan nodded. "You too, Roger." The elevator arrived. Glass-walled, designed to showcase the city view as it rose. Ethan stepped inside and pressed 52. The doors closed. The elevator began its climb. Through the glass, Chicago spread out below. The lake was a dark void, ice-covered and frozen. Streetlights made constellations along the shore. Snow fell through the beams of light. He counted floors. 20, 30. His reflection appeared in the glass. Dark suit against the city lights. Face calm. Hands steady. 40, 50. He thought about turning back. Getting off at 51 and taking the stairs down. Going home to Lily and pretending this had never happened. The elevator chimed. 52. The doors slid open. Music drifted through the air. Conversation. Laughter. Ethan stepped out into the hallway. Directly ahead, double doors stood open. Through them, he could see the penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows, glittering lights, well-dressed people holding champagne glasses. He walked forward. One step, another. He didn't hurry. Didn't hesitate. Just moved with steady purpose, as if he'd done this 1,000 times. As he reached the doorway, a woman in a black dress turned and saw him. Her eyes widened. She touched the arm of the man beside her. He looked. then another person, and another. Like ripples spreading across water, the awareness moved through the room. Conversation began to fade. Ethan stepped across the threshold, into the warmth, into the light, into the silence that followed his entrance. The penthouse stretched before him, white furniture, abstract art, windows that showcased the city and the falling snow beyond. Candles everywhere, their flames reflected infinitely in the glass. Approximately 40 people, all of them beautiful in the way money made people beautiful. Good teeth, good skin, good posture from a lifetime of confidence, all of them staring. Ethan didn't smile, didn't apologize, didn't shrink. He just existed. A woman approached the hostess, presumably Victoria Hale, mid-40s. Blonde hair pulled back, diamond earrings catching the candlelight. Mr. Walker. Her voice was controlled, surprised but not panicked. Miss Hale, thank you for the invitation. Yes, of course. Can I get you a drink? Please. She gestured to a server, who appeared with a tray. Ethan took a glass of champagne. The room remained quiet. Someone coughed. Victoria smiled, a practiced expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. Everyone. This is Ethan Walker. He works here at Meridian. The emphasis on works here was subtle but clear. A man in an expensive suit stepped forward. What do you do, Ethan? The question sounded friendly. The eyes were not. I'm in facilities management. Facilities management. The man smiled. That's a nice way to put it. It's an accurate way to put it. Sure. But specifically, what do you manage? Ethan met his gaze steadily. Cleanliness. Order. The functioning of spaces people depend on. So, you're a janitor. The word landed like a weight. Ethan took a sip of champagne. I'm a custodian. Night shift. The man's smile widened. And you thought you'd come up here and… What? Network? I thought I'd accept an invitation I received. Right. The invitation. The man glanced at Victoria, then back. Bold choice. Is it? Coming to a party where you clean the floors. Most people would find that awkward. Ethan set down his glass on a nearby table. I clean floors throughout this building. Should I find it awkward to exist in any of these spaces? The man blinked. Someone laughed a short, uncomfortable sound. Victoria touched the man's arm. Richard, why don't we get you a refill? She steered him away. Ethan stood alone in the center of the room. The crowd had formed a loose circle around him, close enough to observe, far enough to maintain distance. He didn't move toward anyone, didn't try to join conversations, just stood, present. A younger woman approached, phone in hand. I'm Melissa Grant. I write for the Tribune. Mind if I ask what brings you here tonight? An invitation. Yes. But she glanced around, lowered her voice. Do you know why you were invited? I have a theory, which is that Miss Hale wanted to see what would happen, and what is happening. Ethan looked around the room. At the expensive clothes, the calculated casualness, the way people whispered behind their hands. People are revealing themselves. Melissa's eyebrows rose. Meaning everyone's showing me exactly who they are. I appreciate the clarity. She studied him for a moment. Can I quote you on that? If you'd like. She made a note on her phone, then moved away. The circle tightened. Time passed strangely. Ethan remained near the center of the room, not quite part of any group, impossible to ignore. People approached in waves, some with genuine curiosity, a few with kindness, most with something else, a need to categorize, to understand why the custodian was standing among them wearing a suit. An older woman in pearls. Do you have children? A daughter, Lily. She's 8. How sweet. And does she know you're here? She does. What does she think about it? She told me to stand up straight. The woman smiled genuine this time. Smart girl, but she was the exception. A man in his 30s. So is this like a make-a-wish thing? Victoria doing charity? Ethan, I'm not dying. Right, no. I didn't mean, I just meant. I know what you meant. The man retreated. Another. You must feel out of place. Ethan. Do I look out of place? Well, no. But, then, perhaps I'm not. They wanted him uncomfortable. Wanted apologies. Wanted him to acknowledge that he was somewhere he didn't belong. He gave them nothing. Just stood there, calm and present, forcing them to confront their own discomfort. By 8 o'clock, the party had divided into two groups. One half had decided to ignore him to continue their conversations about ski trips and investments and summer homes as if he weren't there. The other half couldn't look away. Victoria moved between groups, smiling, hosting, pretending everything was normal. But Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided meeting his eyes. Richard, the man who'd called him a janitor, had been drinking steadily. His voice grew louder. I still don't get it, he announced to his group, not bothering to lower his volume. What's the point? Is this performance art? Is he trying to make some kind of statement? Richard. Victoria's voice held a warning. What? I'm just asking. We're all thinking it. Some of us are thinking you've had enough to drink. Some of us are thinking this whole thing is ridiculous. He turned toward Ethan. No offense, buddy, but what are you doing here? Really? Ethan met his gaze. Existing. Existing. Right. Very profound. But this is a private party. For friends, colleagues, people who, he waved his glass, searching for words. People who know each other, who belong to the same world. And which world is that? You know exactly which world. The room had gone silent again. Ethan kept his voice level. I received an invitation. I accepted. Everything else is projection. Projection. Richard laughed. You think you're smart, don't you? I think I'm tired of people assuming I'm not. Oh, here we go. The victim narrative. I haven't claimed to be a victim. Then what are you claiming? Nothing. I'm simply here. You're the one who seems bothered by that. Richard's face flushed. I'm bothered because this is weird. Because you don't belong here and everyone knows it. Everyone? Or just you? Everyone. Richard looked around for support. A few people nodded. Most looked away. Ethan took a slow breath. I work in this building. I keep it clean. I make sure the spaces you occupy are functional and pleasant. I do this every night while you're home sleeping. I'm good at my job. I take pride in my work. I provide for my daughter. And tonight, I was invited to a party. I put on my best suit and came. That's the entire story. The fact that you're angry about it, that says something about you, not me. Richard opened his mouth, closed it. The silence stretched. Then, you were invited as a joke. The words dropped like stones. Everyone froze. Victoria stepped forward. Richard, that's enough. It's true, though, isn't it? He looked at her. You said it yourself. You wanted to see if they'd actually come. The custodian, the security guard, the secretary. You thought it would be funny. Victoria's face went pale. Ethan watched her carefully. She didn't deny it. The truth settled over the room like snow. Someone set down a glass. The sound was very loud. Ethan nodded slowly. I see. Victoria found her voice. Mr. Walker. It's all right. No, I should explain. You don't need to explain. He looked around the room. I understand perfectly. He picked up his coat from where he'd left it on a chair. No one moved. He walked toward the door with the same steady pace he'd entered with. Wait. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Please don't leave like this. Ethan stopped, turned. How should I leave? She had no answer. He looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, but with something quieter and more devastating. Disappointment. Then he looked at the rest of them. The frozen faces, the expensive clothes, the champagne glasses catching candlelight. Thank you for the evening, he said quietly. It was very educational. He walked out. The elevator doors closed behind him. The penthouse remained silent. Ethan stood in the descending elevator, watching the city drop away. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. But inside, something had shifted. He'd known it might be a joke. Marcus had warned him. But knowing and experiencing were different things. The elevator reached the ground floor. Roger looked up from his desk, clearly surprised to see Ethan returning so soon. "Everything all right, Mr. Walker?" "Everything's fine, Roger." "Have a good night." He stepped out into the cold. Snow was falling harder now, building up on the sidewalks. The wind had picked up, cutting through his coat. He started walking, not toward the bus stop, just walking. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Mrs. Patterson made hot chocolate. Did you have fun?" He stopped under a streetlight, snow swirling around him. "Did you have fun?" He typed back. "Coming home soon. Save me some hot chocolate." 3 dots appeared, then, "Okay. Love you, Dad." "Love you too, sweetheart." He put the phone away and kept walking. 15 minutes later, he found himself at the lake. The water was completely frozen, covered in snow. The city lights reflected on the ice and the low clouds. He stood at the railing, letting the cold air clear his head. He thought about Lily's question, about sitting in the middle of the cafeteria when someone tried to make you sit in the back, about standing up straight even when people wanted you small. He'd done that tonight. He'd walked into a room full of people who saw him as a joke, and he'd refused to play the part they'd written for him. They'd wanted him embarrassed. He'd given them dignity instead. That was worth something. That was worth the cold walk home. The bus ride home was quiet. Ethan sat in the back, watching the city pass. At this hour, most passengers were service workers, nurses, security guards, cleaners, heading to or from overnight shifts. He was one of them. Nothing tonight had changed that, but something had changed in him. He got off at his stop and climbed the stairs to his apartment. Mrs. Patterson met him at the door. That was quick. It was. She studied his face. "You okay?" "I'm fine. Thank you for watching, Lily." "Anytime." She's asleep on the couch. After Mrs. Patterson left, Ethan found Lily curled up with a blanket, her library book open on her chest. There was indeed hot chocolate cold now waiting for him on the kitchen counter. He picked Lily up carefully. She murmured something but didn't wake. He carried her to her bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. In his room, he changed out of the suit and hung it back in the closet. He should sleep. He had work tomorrow night. Instead, he sat by the window and watched the snow fall over the sleeping city. Sunday morning, Ethan woke to his phone ringing. "Marcus, at 7 in the morning. Have you seen it?" Ethan sat up, groggy. "Seen what?" "The Tribune. There's an article about the party, about you." Ethan put Marcus on speaker and opened his phone's browser. The headline appeared. "The Uncomfortable Guest. How a Night Shift Custodian Exposed High Society's Cruelty," by Melissa Grant. Ethan read in silence. The article was thorough, detailed. It included quotes from several party guests, some defending Victoria, others admitting discomfort with the evening's premise. Richard was quoted, sounding defensive. It was meant to be light-hearted. A social experiment. No one was trying to be cruel. Victoria declined to comment. But the centerpiece was Ethan's quote. "People are revealing themselves. Everyone's showing me exactly who they are. I appreciate the clarity." The article continued. Ethan Walker didn't need to prove he belonged at a penthouse party. He simply existed there, with quiet dignity, while those around him scrambled to justify why his presence made them uncomfortable. In doing so, he held up a mirror to a certain class of Chicagoans who pride themselves on progressive values while maintaining strict boundaries about who deserves access to their world. The article had been shared thousands of times. Comments ranged from supportive to outraged to thoughtful. "Ethan," Marcus's voice pulled him back. "You still there?" "I'm here. How are you feeling about this?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet. Building management is going to freak out. Probably. You might want to prepare for some attention. I'll handle it. After hanging up, Ethan made coffee and waited for Lily to wake up. She appeared at 8:30, hair tangled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, sweetheart." She climbed into the chair across from him. "How was the party?" "Interesting." "Did people be mean?" He smiled a little. "Some were. Some weren't. But you stood up straight?" "I did." "Good." She reached for the cereal box. "Mrs. Patterson said you came home early. Did they kick you out?" "No. I left when I was ready." She poured milk over her cereal. "Because it wasn't fun?" "Because I'd learned what I needed to learn." "What did you learn?" Ethan considered this. That some people are kind, and some people are afraid, and the afraid ones get angry when you don't act the way they expect. Lily processed this while eating. "Are you sad?" "Not really." "Then what?" He thought about it. "Tired." "But okay." She nodded, satisfied. Monday morning, Ethan's phone started ringing. Local news stations wanted interviews. Online publications wanted his story. Someone from a national morning show left a voicemail. He ignored most of them. But one call he answered. "Mr. Walker? This is Jennifer Torres from the Chicago Workers Alliance. I read about what happened Saturday night, and I wanted to reach out. I'm listening. We represent service workers across the city, custodians, security personnel, food service staff. People who keep buildings running but are often treated as invisible. Your experience resonated with a lot of our members. I appreciate that. We'd like to organize a meeting. Not a publicity stunt, a real conversation about working conditions, respect in the workplace, and how we can push for change. Would you be willing to participate?" Ethan was quiet. "You don't have to decide now," Jennifer continued. "But I want you to know you're not alone. What happened to you happens in smaller ways every day. And there are people who want to do something about it. Let me think about it. Of course, I'll send you some information. No pressure." After the call ended, Ethan sat with the idea. He'd never thought of himself as an activist. He just wanted to work, provide for Lily, live his life. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the act of simply existing with dignity, of refusing to be diminished, was already a form of resistance. Tuesday afternoon, Ethan received an unexpected visitor. There was a knock at his apartment door. He opened it to find Victoria Hale standing in the hallway, looking profoundly out of place in her designer coat and heels. "Miss Hale, Mr. Walker. May I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered, taking in the small space. The worn furniture, the clean but modest surroundings. Lily was at school. They were alone. "Would you like to sit?" "Thank you." She perched on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap. Silence. Finally. "I owe you an apology." Ethan sat across from her. "All right. Not an excuse. Not an explanation. An apology." She met his eyes. "What I did was cruel. I invited you and others as an experiment, a game, without considering the harm it might cause. I was thoughtless and unkind. And I'm sorry." Ethan listened without interrupting. "I've spent the last 2 days reading the comments online, the emails, the messages from people sharing their own experiences. And I realize I've been part of a system that treats people like you as invisible unless it's convenient or amusing to see them in a different context. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it. And because." She took a breath. "Because I want to do better. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know I'm listening." Ethan studied her. "What does doing better look like to you?" "Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. But I've started by meeting with building management. We're reviewing the working conditions for all our service staff. Better pay, better hours, access to the same amenities other employees have, like using the main entrance and break rooms. That's a start. It's not enough. No. But it's something." She nodded. I also wanted to ask if you'd be willing to participate in a larger conversation. A town hall meeting about workplace dignity. Not as a spectacle, but as someone whose perspective matters. Ethan was quiet. You can say no, Victoria added. I wouldn't blame you. I'll think about it. That's fair. She stood. Thank you for seeing me. He walked her to the door. She paused in the threshold. For what it's worth, Mr. Walker, you handled Saturday night with more grace than anyone in that room. Myself included. Thank you. After she left, Ethan stood in the quiet apartment. Something was shifting. Slowly. Imperfectly, but shifting. 2 weeks later, the town hall meeting took place. Ethan almost didn't go, but Lily convinced him. You stood up straight at the party, she said. You should stand up straight at the meeting too. So he went. The venue was a community center on the south side. About 200 people showed up: service workers, union representatives, journalists, and a few building managers. Victoria was there. So was Jennifer Torres from the Workers' Alliance. The meeting wasn't perfect. Some building managers were defensive. Some workers were angry. Some conversations went in circles. But it happened. People talked, listened, shared stories. Ethan spoke briefly about his experience, not the party specifically, but the daily reality of being invisible. Of cleaning spaces you're not supposed to occupy. Of using service elevators because the main lobby isn't for you. Other workers shared similar stories. By the end of the evening, several concrete proposals had been outlined. Standardized wage increases for custodial staff citywide. Access to all building amenities regardless of position. Anti-discrimination training for management. A formal grievance process for workplace respect issues. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. March arrived cold and stubborn. Chicago's winter never ended cleanly. It lingered through false springs and sudden snowfalls, refusing to surrender until it was ready. Ethan still worked the night shift. Still cleaned floors and restrooms and conference rooms. But now, when he finished his shift, he sometimes took the main elevator instead of the service one. Sometimes he walked through the lobby instead of the basement corridor. Not to prove anything, just because he could. The first time Lily visited him at work after everything changed, they walked in through the front doors together. Roger held the door open. Good morning, Mr. Walker. Is this your daughter? This is Lily. Nice to meet you, Lily. She looked up at her father, eyes bright with understanding. They rode the regular elevator up to the break room, where Marcus had coffee waiting. Hey, kiddo, Marcus said to Lily. Your dad tells me you like math. I do. Want to see something cool? He pulled out a maintenance schedule. This is how we calculate square footage for cleaning zones. Pure geometry. Lily leaned in, interested. Ethan watched them, sipping his coffee. Nothing had fundamentally changed. The work was the same. The hours were the same. The challenges were the same. But something had shifted. A recognition, an acknowledgement, a refusal to be invisible. Later, as he and Lily left the building, they passed the spot where he'd stood that snowy night in January, looking at the tower before entering Victoria Hale's party. Dad? Lily tugged his hand. Are you glad you went? To that party? He thought about it. Yes, even though they were mean? Even though. Because now, things are a little different. Better? Getting there. They walked down Michigan Avenue as morning traffic picked up. The snow had finally melted, leaving the streets wet and gleaming. Lily swung their joined hands. I'm proud of you. Ethan squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart, for being brave enough to sit in the middle of the cafeteria, for telling me to stand up straight, for being exactly who you are. She smiled. They continued down the street, past coffee shops and bus stops and early morning commuters. Just a father and daughter, walking through the city they called home. No longer invisible, not because the world had changed, but because they'd refused to disappear. And sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes, that's everything.